Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mystery Theory podcast. Today, before I start with the case and tell you a little bit of the struggle while I was doing my research, I want to welcome everyone that is new. My name is Letty, and I am so happy that you're here today. If you've been here for a while, thank you for coming back, and I would invite every one of you to come back every Sunday for a new true crime case podcast. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, please let me know by rating the video if this is something that you enjoy having as an extra on Wednesdays. Again, on YouTube, on the Mystery Theory. Now, today I want to share a case that was requested somewhat recently by Perfectly You Beauty on YouTube. This is a case that, first of all, is the Erica Baker's case. And she mentioned that this happened where she lives and in Kettering, Ohio. And when I started to do the research, I kind of stopped because I couldn't find much, which I always find very sad. Doesn't matter if this is a case involving children or a child or a pregnant woman. I just feel so sad when there are cases that, you just really have to dig because the press is not even, the news, the articles are not as readily available as other cases that in a way makes it easier to cross-reference information and try to find the most accurate one or accurate information on the case. But at the same time, it's like trying to put an entire case, trying to put a timeline together because the news don't go back to what happened that day. It's just mostly based on what happened after Erica disappeared. So I worked on the information that I got. I tried to confirm as much as I could by going to different media outlets and trying to find a base and something that they agreed on, and left out some things that there is no proof or there is no evidence that is true. This is a confusing case, so please turn on your thinking part of the brain, true crime related, and in the end, it's really going to be up to you what you believe happened to Erica. This is still an unsolved mystery. It's a missing child, but somebody went to jail for her murder, even though her body was never found. I know, it's confusing from the get-go. Again, this happened in Kettering, Ohio. Kettering is a suburb of Dayton, Ohio, and it has a population of about 55,000 and something. It's located in Montgomery County and is one of the best places to live in Ohio, according to this website that I like to do research on the places that usually are somewhat related to a true crime case. In that website, they tell you the crime rate, they tell you about the schools. They tell you if it feels like if it has like a suburban feel, if it feels like a city, if it's rural. It kind of goes through the basics, and I like to refer to that quite a lot. But in this website, they referred to Kettering as offering its residents a dense suburban feel. And just a cool fact that I thought I would add here is that the public schools in Kettering are highly rated, actually, with an A+. So pretty cool place to be in, and especially in the surrounding areas, seems like Kettering, it's a good place to live. Now, Erica Nicole Baker lived in Kettering. Her parents were Greg Baker and Melissa Baker as well, but Melissa is referred to as Misty in most of the news outlets, so I will refer to her as Misty. However, Greg and Melissa, or Misty, they're not married at the time that we are going to talk about. They've been divorced, and Erica was kind of visiting with her dad and mom, but spent most of her time at her mom's house. On February 7th, 1999, Erica was only 9 years old, so you have an idea. And she was spending most of her day with her dad. That day, she was a bit upset though. Her dad shared that she really wanted to go to this father-daughter dance, and Greg forgot to buy the tickets. And now it was too late, and Erica was kind of upset about it. But as a 9-year-old girl, or typical 9-year-old girl, she got over it, she settled down, and her dad dropped her off at her mom's house at 3 p.m. that same day. Erica's aunt had a Shih Tzu dog, and I am not 100% sure if Erica's aunt lived with her mom and Erica, but I do know that she was at the house that day, and when Erica got there, she asked her mom, Misty, if she could go out and walk this dog. Again, this was something that she used to do all the time. It was not out of the ordinary, like some people said in a couple of news outlets mentioned this not being the normal, but according to the mom, Misty, she even knew the route. I mean, Erica was not walking in the road or, in the sidewalk. They lived very close to Indian Riffle Park, and so it had trails and a pond, and it was a safe place to go out for a walk. Now, a couple witnesses saw Erica on a bench with the dog near the park's pond. And then later on, a couple that was walking their dog saw Erica leaving the pond area and walking towards the track of Indian Riffle Middle School. Okay, so again, lots of places that you can walk safely. And sometime later, though, the same couple that saw her leaving the pond area and walking towards the track of the middle school found the dog dragging the leash. The dog was wet and shivering in the doorway of one of the buildings at that same middle school. Now, I have to make a couple of clarifications here. In some articles, they said that it was the couple that found the dog, the same couple. Some others say that the lady, just her, found the dog, and later on the guy came along. But we do know that they were the same people that saw her earlier on. However, according to my research, they did not know at the time that this dog was the same dog that the little girl was walking around earlier. Yes, it's a Shih Tzu. Yes, it's a very particular dog, but they just didn't realize that was that same one. So they ended up calling animal control that picked up the dog, and that was it. They didn't think anything of it. Now, Misty back home was getting worried. It was getting late, and Erica was not home. And after kind of going around and looking in the places which she knew that she would walk the dog around the house, this was something that she used to do, so she kind of knew where to look for her daughter. She got worried, and she ended up calling the police. And a massive search started. Not only on the local police department, but other towns, and even the FBI was there pretty much within hours of being reported. And nobody wasted a second. They were all trying to find her. This was big, and at one point everyone was looking for Erica. Where could she be? Remember that the dog was not around because they took the dog, so it was kind of maybe the dog was still around. It would have given them an indication of something. But anyways, Misty gave all the information that she could. Erica was wearing a Winnie the Pooh sweatshirt, a pink raincoat because it was raining, blue jeans, and white sneakers. Where was this beautiful blonde hair, hazel-eyed girl? They gave the description of the even birthmarks and how her teeth were growing, because she was only 9, so they were not perfectly straight, and they were trying to give as much information as possible so they could find her, and maybe somebody seen her and help them to see where she went. So Greg and Misty, Erica's parents, both passed the polygraph, and after doing their regular questioning, they were removed from the suspect list almost immediately. A few days after, Erica disappeared because sadly this took them nowhere. They kept looking, but they couldn't find her. A few days later, they found a Winnie the Pooh sweatshirt that the dogs picked up the scent, but the parents said that that wasn't hers. So I don't know how the dogs could have picked up the scent, but if it wasn't hers, but that is something that was very debated, and even though it doesn't really make sense, I don't think it helps this case at all to focus on that specific detail. Now, 5 months passed, and in January of 2000, police think that they have more than one suspect, but they don't have any evidence to arrest them. So it sounds crazy, but most of these suspects that I like to call pieces of nonsense had histories of child molestation. So there you go. Gosh, it really upset me when I read about this. But please don't get me wrong. I'm not blaming the police in this case, because once I started to dig, I found out that yes, they did mention this in January of the year 2000, but they've been investigating and they had them on their radar for quite a while. Actually, on July 14th, 1999, two detectives went to visit one of these suspects, Christian Gabriel, who lived in Jeffersonville, Ohio. And they casually questioned him, even though later on they said that they read him his rights and everything. And this guy said that something could have happened with Erica. Now, this is the kind of thing that really doesn't make sense to me, and there is not a good explanation. It's only, this is frustrating, so we're going to share it on the news kind of information. But what I gathered, and again, this is what I kind of understood of what was said and reading in between the lines of this article, apparently this guy, and I'm gonna call him Christian, even though I have in my notes his full name, Christian John Gabriel. By the way, 3 first names, but yeah, kind of confusing at first. But apparently this guy, Christian, had some problems with the law. And he was being charged for other things, and he was probably on his toes. That's what I think that happened. He was probably thinking, well, I'll throw something out there so they would just, if they have something on me, I can give them something on what happened to Erica, because they suspect that I had something to do with her. And that way I can avoid jail time or something like that. Now, this is what I'm assuming. That's why he said something could have happened to her, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. But again, that is what I'm assuming. I am not sure why would anybody said, hey, we're coming here to question about Erica's disappearance, and somebody said, oh, well, something could have happened with her or to her. Again, that's the kind of thing that if you don't see it in the narrative, and if you were not there as they were questioning him, or if that information is not shared, it really doesn't make sense but frustrate me to know that he did say that, and that is in documents and that in the court. I mean, he did say that. In what context? I'm not sure, and you'll have to decide that for yourself. Now, police knew that Christian had a van as well, okay? They were not messing around. They were not tinkering. They were not trying to catch him in a lie or something, even though that would have helped them. But they knew that he had a van that matched the description of the van that some witnesses saw at the time that Erica disappeared, or at least while she was walking the dog. This was something that was not revealed initially, and I'm assuming that for a good reason. If they said some witnesses saw a van that looked this way, that, it was this color, maybe that would have spooked whoever owned that van away and got rid of it or something like that. So it made sense. And they knew that this guy, Christian, did own a van that matched precisely the description of the van that the witnesses described. Now, interestingly enough, he sold that van on February 23rd, 1999. So about 16 days after Erica disappeared. So he said that he sold it to his buddy, Kevin Smith. But I find it very suspicious that Erica disappeared on February 7th and then he sold the van shortly after. The van, at that point, remember that they knew something was up, and even though I cannot tell you the grounds or how they did it, but they actually impounded this van and they took it to Miami Valley Regional Crime Lab, but they couldn't find any evidence that linked it to Erica, so it was almost like a dead end. They knew that he had something to do with it. He almost mentioned something that would incriminate himself, but they had nothing to go on that. So they had to leave Christian alone for the time being. And that was the last time that, they talked to him July, and then they kind of mentioned that they had suspects on January of the year 2000, but we have to fast forward to the year 2004. I mean, this is still a cold case. The police is saying, well, we do have an idea, but we don't have proof. So it's still a mystery and it's still unsolved. And the family are still questioning what happened to this little girl, right? So on 2004, the police interview him again. And I'm talking about Christian. But in that interview, he says that he clearly remembers that on February 7th, 1999, so almost, 5 years ago, he let his buddy, Kevin Smith, borrow his van. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to don't believe this guy. I mean, he is kind of sketchy. He had a record. He said that he knew something, but then didn't say much. And so, I'm assuming, well, at this point, it was revealed that the police put some surveillance on him to try to catch him in something. Okay, this was a guy with a lot of petty crime and a lot of involvement with drugs. He was an addict himself. So it wouldn't have been hard to try to catch him in something where they can arrest him and could question him, right? So they installed this tracking device, but Christian's girlfriend saw a police officer kind of messing with this tracking device, and that is when the whole surveillance operation had to stop. I mean, they were caught. Not a great way to do some kind of surveillance on a guy. And I'm assuming that this is what we know, but probably we're tracking him for quite some time, or maybe even before this time, they were still doing it and not finding much to charge him. Now on February 4th, so this was just 3 days before the statute of limitations on the offenses would have expired, Christian John Gabriel was indicted for the evidence. I think it was quite a few things, but I'll mention a few. Evidence tampering and gross abuse of a corpse in connection with Erica's case. The charges started to grow. That was just the beginning. And the police also had something else on him. Apparently on July 19th, 2004, they ended up arresting him on an unrelated charge of receiving stolen property. So again, on February 4th of 2004, 3 days before the statute of limitations on those particular offenses would have expired, they basically charged him, okay? But he was not arrested for that, but for something unrelated on July 19th of that same year. Apparently, I don't know if I mentioned, but it was like a charge of receiving stolen property. So could have been something that they found while still checking up on this guy. Not 100% sure, but it is also said in a lot of these articles that in one of the interviews that he had, and I don't know if this was as he was being arrested or before he got arrested, he went outside and smoked, and while he was smoking, he told somebody that worked there at the police department that he was a passenger in the van that struck Erica. So he went inside and said, that he was in that van, Christian. Jan Franks, this was later on, we learned that this was his girlfriend, Christian's girlfriend at the time. Clifford Butts and Clifford's girlfriend. Okay, so I don't have her name, and that's how she was referred to. So basically, a couple of couples were shoplifting at Mayer. Okay, this is according to my research, some kind of a grocery store. We don't have it here in Utah, so I've never been to one. But apparently, I don't know if this is like a Fred Meyer that you have, clothes and stuff like that. But I'm assuming it does. Or if not, they were stealing grocery items. I don't know, but they were shoplifting, according to what Christian told the police that day. And according to Christian, Jan Franks was driving and accidentally hit Erica. And because of what they were doing, they decided to put Erica in the van and take it to Christian's apartment in Jeffersonville, Ohio, where they proceeded to smoke crack cocaine and a bunch of other things that were fun to them at the time. And mind you, this is what Christian is telling the police, okay, in his statement. Then he also said that he wanted and begged to take the girl to the hospital to the others, but the others wanted to party. So, I mean, how can he say no, right? So they decided to just party and do drugs and then take the body to Huffman Dam where they buried her. Okay, that's the first thing that he said. So the police took him to that specific spot that he said that they buried the body, but nobody was there. They couldn't find anything, not even clothes or anything that belonged to Erica. Now, good luck trying to make Jan Marie Franks confess to being driving that van, because she died back in 2001, and we're talking about his confessing to this in 2004. So the police, I mean, this was just so hard. I mean, you have to be basically a magician and try to find loopholes, because the police tried to make her lawyer at the time talk. Remember, Jan was a drug addict and she was a petty crime kind of criminal, and she was in trouble most of her life. So they just wanted to know if maybe Jan mentioned anything to her lawyer, Beth Lewis. However, Beth Lewis said, I don't care that my client is dead. By the way, Jan Franks died of an overdose again in 2001. So the Ohio police were like, okay, we have to do something about this. So in Ohio, if the husband, in this case of the deceased, that is Jan, asked the lawyer to speak and just say what Jan could have told her about that, it's perfectly legal. Okay, so the lawyers don't have to be quiet if the husband or wife is still alive and their client died. But this Beth Lewis attorney, she questioned the authority that the husband had, and she refused to answer any questions, even though she was being held in contempt of court, and she even went to jail. So I don't know what her deal was. I don't know. There were some just, shady articles that said that she just didn't know, and she was pushed too much. I mean, if she doesn't know, she doesn't know. I'm pretty sure that the police understand that she could have said something, as much as she maybe never mentioned that, because she was never charged with that. So why would she say, hey, by the way, I ran over this girl in the year... It just doesn't make sense, okay? It doesn't make sense. And this piece of information was very popular in this case. I hate to say that word, popular in a case like this, but it was very well known, and a lot of people question this Beth Lewis. I've been learning about a lot of fishy attorneys. I mean, recently in some of the cases. I don't know if you guys remember the other one that we talk about, that she was removed and her license was suspended. Yeah, in another case that I shared with you guys in December. But anyways, according to the police, again, they later on learned from him that Jan was Christian's girlfriend. And now I'm gonna go a little bit in what the prosecution was saying about Christian in this whole thing. I mean, the prosecutors believe that Christian was the one that was actually driving the van, and that he was blaming it on Jan because she was dead and couldn't say otherwise, and that would save him if he was just a passenger and not the driver. But they believe that he was driving when he struck Erica on Glengarry Drive, and this is near the rec center park that she was walking the dog at. And they also believe that he buried her in Caesars Creek State Park. Now, I haven't been there, but I did my research. I went through the maps to kind of see where the accident happened and where they would have to go to, or how far away was this state park. But this state park is ginormous. It's huge and is very I don't want to say wild, but you know, it's pretty intact. And I just don't, what kind of put in my head that maybe he doesn't even remember. If he in fact buried her there, he would have to have a good memory to kind of remember where he parked and how much he walked towards what direction and near what, if he even kind of thought about looking at landmarks or something to kind of remember where he buried her body. All I'm saying is that this state park is beautiful, but it's huge. I can't remember how many acres. And it just, if he in fact was under the influence of drugs, and if he in fact was also pretty much wasted and, you know, drunk, I mean, I think that somebody with just fresh, you know, with none of those impairments, I think it would be hard to remember where you've been and what. It's just, I understand the police believe that, and I 100% believe that they have more than enough evidence to kind of point to that direction, even though they don't know it for sure. But I also can see how somebody can totally forget and just don't remember where he actually put the body. Anyways, Christian said in a different confession that they were together with Jan in the van, and since they were so wasted, and they were shoplifting in the area, I don't know, he just kind of made it seem like he was not himself and he just couldn't remember. He took the police to a bunch of different places at this particular state park, because later on he said that Jan told him, just put the body in the van and let's just go to the state park. I'm gonna drive us there and we're gonna bury her there. And he even mentioned that park too. So it's not like the police came up with his name. He took them to several spots in that same park, but he just can't find it. And her body was never recovered. But Christian also filed a motion to suppress all statements that he made and all the physical evidence because the police, according to him, made him confess and even fed him the information that he needed to confess to what allegedly he didn't do. So this was, anyways, this was overruled by the court. So really, it was not something that can you hear that? My gosh, why are they such a snore couple? Both of them. Gosh. Okay. So this was eventually overruled. He continued to say that he was innocent. I mean, he was convicted on October of 2005 and sentenced to a maximum term of 6 years in prison, and he was eventually released from custody in June of 2011. So even though Erica's body was never located, he was convicted for it. And because, again, foul play was suspected because of all the circumstances. And he did spend 6 years in prison, which I do not understand. But I guess for them was good enough, because the other option would have been of not finding anybody to blame for what happened to Erica. I mean, this guy fought. Okay, this guy, Christian, he fought for his right. He did everything he could to save himself from the charges and even explore legal alternatives that are not even used a lot in this kind of case. I mean, he raised questions about the confessions being fed to him. He said that the Miranda rights were not read to him. But in the end, it was impossible to prove. The court must look at his age, his mentality, his criminal record, the length and intensity or even frequency of the interrogation, physical deprivation, mistreatment, threats, that kind of thing. The court has to keep all those things in mind when they decide to proceed and kind of throw things out or just keep them in and overrule the motion that he filed. But according to the police, when he was arrested, he was read his they didn't read his Miranda rights. He spoke willingly with them for 20 minutes, waiving his rights. He even stopped for fast food on the way to the station. He was never handcuffed. He had there were no threats on any kind of questioning or anything. You know, their videos and everything and recordings, there were no promises. Same thing when he got to the station. I mean, they read his, he waived them by talking, and you know, there were no abuse or no threats, nothing on him that was, you know, he never went to the hospital, he never had a black eye, he never, and that doesn't mean anything, but in this case, that's what threw everything out. And he even was left alone from, you know, the time that they questioned him in July 1999 until, you know, 2004, when they finally got something to question him. But where's Erica? Where's her body? Do you believe that he did, in fact, was pressuring to confess into this nonsense to you because, you know, the time was almost up and he was a criminal anyway and he deserved to be in jail anyways, like some people believe? Or do you believe that, in fact, this is the tricky part of law enforcement? They did know that he did it. He did confess to it, yet they didn't have a way to prove it. And that's what I'm going to be going on right now. I think in my head, it makes sense that the police knew that he did it because of confession, because of circumstantial evidence that they had, because of a lot of things that were not brought to court because they would be thrown out. Some things are just that hearsay, or they are just circumstantial evidence, and so they usually get thrown out. And there's a lot of things that need to be left out, because if there's not actual proof or there's not physical evidence, it can be used against you in court in order to give this criminal a pass. So, in my humble opinion and my thoughts and feelings on this case, just to kind of finish this and give you my perspective as I usually do, this was something that did happen that way. But I'm assuming that this guy, Christian, who's the one that's still alive today, and again, I don't know about Clifford Butts or his girlfriend. I don't know why they were not mentioned in any of the articles. I'm assuming that in the end they were not in the van. Maybe they were. Maybe they were dead by the time. Who knows? Okay. But what we did know is that the other person that was presumed to be in the van was dead. And Christian is saying that they were high and that they were drunk, and that he never specifically said, at least not in the documents that I read or the articles that I read, he never said, "Oh, I don't remember where I buried her." Maybe he did say that to the police and he's trying to remember, but he was given a map of this state park, and he kind of went through in his mind trying to remember where he put her body. To me, it makes sense that he did it and forgot where he put the body. This is not a back lot with a dumpster where he put her body. This is not a house. This is not a yard. This is hundreds and hundreds of acres. And I'm assuming that when he tried to hide the body, I should say, he probably didn't do it by a trail. He probably didn't do it by a parking lot. He probably didn't do it in the most common areas where most people go. I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking right now, but he probably went to a remote spot and buried her body there. That's what I believe. Is that the truth? I don't know, because to be honest, this guy until the last second continued to say that he was innocent. So it's just up to you if you believe that he was or not. But it's just too much evidence and too much knowledge on the police side that pointed to that direction, and that he said it even before they knew more about this. I mean, he was the one to confess of this thing. So it's almost like you pick your doors in this kind of case. But what do we get? This is still an unsolved mystery. This is still something that we don't know. And I guess until her body shows up, we won't know for sure what really happened to Erica. Does it make sense that this was a car accident? Yes, it does make sense. But it also makes sense that the guy was, and the guys that were supposedly involved were pedophiles. So it almost like you can see it from all kinds of different angles, and you don't have to be a genius to put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. You just can't. You can't doubt something that points to only one direction. So, was this an accident? I don't know. Was this something that they planned to do? Or maybe even Christian planned to do? And the girlfriend was so high she didn't care? I don't know. But whatever happened, I can't even think about how the mother is feeling right now. And how she probably, I think as a mother, we have to make sense of it out of things. Or we need to find the answers, even if they don't make sense. And right now, we have a bunch of people that really made the wrong choices, let's put it that way. And we're continuing to make the wrong choices for quite some time. But then all of a sudden, there's not enough to do justice or to get justice out of this horrible case. The truth is still unsolved. And still Erica is not here. Now she'd be, 30 years old? Or so? So I don't know where her parents are today. If they are still alive. But if they are, I bet that they still remember that 9-year-old girl every night before they go to bed. And every day while they make breakfast. And every Christmas. And every birthday. And it just breaks my heart to know that they don't know. And trying to get answers from somewhere that sounds like a rock, What do you think happened in this case? Are you from the area? Please, if you are on YouTube listening to this podcast, let me know in the comments down below. If there's anything that you want to add, I have to say that I've read other things about this case, but nothing that was confirmed. So I don't want to be spreading what I call gossip, true crime gossip around. Just think it's not worth it, because in this case, it wouldn't help. It wouldn't give another option. It wouldn't give another explanation. It wouldn't give another suspect. But, this true crime gossip, as I call it, don't make it into my videos. But feel free to share whatever you think and whatever you read and whatever you think will add something to the case, keeping it respectful and thoughtful, as if the family would be reading what you write. Okay, so thanks again for being here, guys. I truly appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.